Hello, and thank you for clicking on this video. Before the video starts, I need you to do two things to help this channel grow. One is subscribe down below, and the second is like this video and share it with anybody that you want to spread MMA news to, whether it's family, friends, anybody. I always appreciate your support. And now let's get to the video.
Hello, everybody. My name is Tyler Russo, and this is the KO Podcast, episode number 47. In this episode, I will review UFC 298, and this upcoming weekend, we have UFC Fight Night Moreno vs. Royval 2, and that is in Mexico, which is very exciting because that means we are going to have a live crowd there in Mexico City. It should be a very, very fun card. Ring that bell. All right, let's get into this UFC 298 card. Kicking off the whole entire card, we had Miranda Maverick getting the decision victory over Andrea Lee. Miranda Maverick is now back in the women's flyweight rankings. Next up, we had a welterweight bout. We had Josh Quinlan taking on Danny Barlow. Danny Barlow coming into this fight, making his UFC debut. And man, what a debut it was for Barlow. He gets the TKO finish in the second round. But according to Barlow, and he posted the x-ray photos on Twitter, he broke his arm in the first round. So he managed to tough it out and get that third round finish. Very impressive for Danny Barlow. Moving on into the prelims, we had a light heavyweight bout. We had Zhang Mingyang getting the TKO finish in the first round. We also had another prospect in the bantamweight division, Rainya Nakamura. He got the decision victory. And of course, we had a heavyweight fight. We had Marcos Rodrigo de Lima taking on Junior Tafa. De Lima was supposed to face the other Tafa brother, but he was injured during training, so Junior Tafa really stepped in on very, very short notice. Both of them had the right amount of time to make the weight, and this fight was luckily put on for both of these guys. Obviously, De Lima gets to keep his fight intact, and Junior Tafa gets to get paid when he wasn't really expecting to, but De Lima gets the TKO victory in the second round. De Lima really beat up Junior Tafa's lead leg. Moving on in the prelim headliner, we had a women's strawweight bout. We had Amanda Lemos taking on Mackenzie Dern. Mackenzie Dern did step in on short notice. Tatiana Suarez was supposed to be Lemos's opponent, but she was injured in camp, so now Lemos and Dern, that was the matchup. Lemos gets the decision victory. Really put a lot of damage on Mackenzie Dern. You could see it on Dern's face. She was very beat up, but I gotta give it to Dern. She always comes to fight. She doesn't shy away, and sometimes, that hurts her that she doesn't shy away from fighting. Just like in that Andrade fight, she really got beat up when she maybe could have took a different path to getting at Andrade, but Lemos was the better striker. She proved that. Dern has a huge heart, and she will not give up until, the ref says no more, but, big victory for her to kind of get this decision loss. It's a loss, but definitely it shows how tough Dern can be. We are now here at the main card. Kicking it off, we had a middleweight bout. We had Anthony Hernandez taking on Roman Kopylov, and Anthony Hernandez gets the second round submission. Huge win for Hernandez. Moving on, we had a bantamweight bout. We had Merab Dvalishvili taking on Henry Cejudo, and Merab Dvalishvili gets the decision victory. Dvalishvili is now the clear-cut #1 contender in this bantamweight division. He should be fighting his next fight in a title fight. And of course, Henry Cejudo, I believe he did retire for the second time after this fight. That was his intention. If he were to lose, he said he would retire. So I believe that is what he did. Moving on, we had a welterweight bout. We had Jeff Neal taking on Ian Gary, and Ian Gary gets the decision victory. He continues to move up in this welterweight division. Now, moving on to the the co-main event, we had a middleweight bout. We had the former middleweight champion Robert Whittaker taking on Paulo Costa, and Robert Whittaker gets the decision over Costa. This was a really good fight, one of the best fights of the night. Both men put it all out there. I believe it was at the end of the first or second round, Paulo Costa connected with a wheel kick that really stumbled Whittaker, but it was at the end of the round, so Whittaker was able to recover in his corner. But still, what a great fight. This is kind of one of those fights where both fighters' stock kind of rise after this. Costa, he did pick up the loss, but it was a very entertaining fight. Robert Whittaker obviously now stays at the top of this middleweight division. He could get the next title shot. We got to see how this division plays out. Now, moving on to the main event of this card, we had a featherweight title bout. We had Alexander the Great Volkanovski, the reigning featherweight champion. He takes on Ilia Topuria, the 14-0 contender. And in the second round, Ilia Topuria gets the KO finish on Volkanovski. It was a right hand to Volkanovski's chin, and it just put him out. Topuria got Volkanovski's back to the cage, and when Topuria gets your back to the cage, that's where he thrives, and his right hook just landed perfectly. And it's, I predicted Topuria to win. I wasn't sure how he was going to do it. I thought he was going to be able to get a finish, either, KO like he did or submission, but he's got unreal power at this, lower weight level class. And just, in my heart, I really wanted Volk to win because he's such a great guy, and he always wants to fight and defend his belt, and you love champions like that. But there was just a stat all week that was kind of being thrown around, and then after the fight, Mark Ramundi, I believe is his name, from ESPN, he's a columnist for them, he posted this on X, and I just want to read this. This is a very telling stat. Men's UFC fighters after their 35th birthday are now 0-15 in UFC title fights at lightweight and under, per ESPN stats info. That is just a crazy stat. Just like any other sport, this sport is very unforgiving with people aging, and definitely in those lower weight classes, you lose just a little bit of speed, and that's the difference. And it's crazy because, if you go all the way to the other extreme, heavyweight, you get guys that are 35 and much older being contenders or even winning championships, and that's just a very crazy stat. So we'll see what happens. Will Ilia Topuria rematch Volk in Spain? That would be an amazing event, really great card, and that would be the UFC's first trip to Spain. That would be insane if that could happen. Obviously, you're concerned with Volk. He's been finished in back-to-back fights pretty brutally. That Islam finish was brutal, even though maybe he wasn't knocked out completely cold. He still took a head kick to the head and follow-up punches. So, Volkanovski's in a very tough spot right now because the longer you wait, he's just getting older. But you don't want to rush back as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how they handle Alexander Volkanovski. But congratulations to Ilia Topuria. He was uber confident, and he made his dream a reality. And you got to respect someone who does that in any sport or in any realm of life. And that was it for UFC 298. A very good card overall, really good matchups, a lot of decisions, but a lot of these fights were fun to watch. Now let's get to this weekend's action. UFC Fight Night, Moreno vs. Rival 2. Let's get into the card. Kicking it off, we got a featherweight bout. We got Eric Silva taking on Muhammad Naimov. Moving up in the card, we got a flyweight bout. We got Luis Rodriguez taking on Danis Bondar, I believe that's how you say his name. Moving on, we got a lightweight bout. We got Claudio Police taking on Faris Zaim. And we have a bantamweight matchup. We got Christian Quanez taking on Ronnie Barcelos. I apologize if I butchered anyone's name. Now, moving on to the main card, we got a lightweight bout. We got Manuel Torres taking on Chris Duncan. That should be a very good opening matchup. Next up, we have a women's strawweight bout. We have Yasmin Jauhari Gi, I believe that's how you say her name. I apologize if I butchered it. She is taking on Sam Hughes. Up next, we have a bantamweight matchup. We got Ricky Turcios taking on Raul Rojas Jr. To me, this is a very, very interesting bantamweight matchup. We got Rojas Jr., who is still only 19 years old, did make his first appearance in the UFC at 17 on Dana White's Contender Series, got that contract, and obviously picked up his first career loss, learned a lot from that. Now he is back. He's taking on the Ultimate Fighter winner of his season, Turcios. This guy is a very interesting guy with his post-fight speech. I like him personally, but this is a very intriguing matchup for me, so definitely watch out for this matchup when it happens. Moving on, we got a lightweight bout. We got Daniel Zellweger taking on Francisco Prado. This also should be a very entertaining matchup. Daniel Zellweger is a prospect to look out for. And now on to the co-main event of the evening. It is in the featherweight division. We have a rematch. We have Yair Rodriguez taking on Brian Ortega. These two did headline a card months ago, but unfortunately an injury cut their fight short. I believe the injury occurred to Brian Ortega. I believe he separated his shoulder or something like that. I think it was at the end of the first round that injury happened. So they rebook Rodriguez and Ortega. Hopefully we can get a very entertaining fight against these very talented featherweights. And now, for the main event of this card, we have a flyweight bout. We have the former flyweight champion, Brandon Moreno. He's taking on recent title challenger, Brandon Royval. They did face off once before, back in 2020, and they fought on a prelim card. It was when Davison Figueiredo was defending his flyweight title. How time passes. Seems like just yesterday that Davis Figueiredo was even part of this division. And their first fight, very entertaining. Again, it was at the Apex. UFC 255 was the card that it took place on. And yeah, this fight was fun, and you know, it was coming to the end of the first round, and then Royval kind of, you know, lets out a gasp of pain, and then, you know, Moreno was on the top position at the time, and unfortunately, Royval hurt his shoulder, separated his shoulder, so he unfortunately couldn't really defend himself, and Moreno, like he should have, took advantage of that, hammer-fisted him, ground and pounded, until the referee had no choice but to stop that fight. Obviously, the fight would have went on if Royval didn't separate his shoulder, but now these guys, they're at it again. Their first fight was very, very entertaining, so I expect them to put on a show for these fans in Mexico City. I know that Brandon Moreno is going to want to put on a show for his country, and you know, he's very prideful of Mexico and what he really represents. And, you know, I love that about him. Moreno seems like such a great guy. And, you know, Royval is a dog. He is not going to give up in the octagon. He is going to fight tooth and nail to the end. And that is going to do it for this episode of the KO podcast. Of course, the podcast link tree is where you're going to get all of the podcast locations on where the podcast is on social media. So check out the podcast link tree. It is in the bio of all of the podcast social media accounts. So make sure to check that out, and thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen. Stay safe, stay blessed. Bye-bye.